Hello and welcome back to the fourth instalment on the Forza Motorsport 4 tuning guide. I'm BV Zeragon and we'll be continuing on in this episode to create our finished car. In the last few episodes we've been going through the suspension, so the springs, ride height, dampers, alignment and the tyres from the first episode, and we'll be going on to another important part when tuning a car, and that's the anti-roll bars. So we'll focus solely on this episode on the anti-roll bars as a one part of the tuning that really underpins the balance of the car, along with the springs as you go around a bend. So it really deserves its own section so you can get the most amount of knowledge and experience on how to tune this. So let's get started. So here we are in the upgrade shop. So to be able to tune the anti-roll bars we need to upgrade that part of the car. So it can be found in platform and handling, and there's two upgrades you need to use, which is the front anti-roll bars and the rear anti-roll bars. The two upgrades are separate for the front and rear of the car, so you need to upgrade each to be able to tune that part of the anti-roll bars. So for each individual one you can either upgrade to street, sport or race, but only the race one allows you to have full customization of the tuning settings. This also does slightly lower the weight of the car. It doesn't really usually affect the PI. It also allows you to carry more lateral G's through a turn, so they're basically required upgrades for any car you make. You want the anti-roll bars to be on it. So now we've upgraded the anti-roll bars, we can move on to tuning this before we jump onto the track. So here we are in the tuning garage and we're going to be tuning the anti-roll bars. Now the anti-roll bars, similar to the springs and the shocks, control how lateral energy, so the weight basically, is transferred from the left to the right side of the car through a turn. So for the front bar, a stiffer front bar allows more weight to be transferred, so the outside wheel through a turn is more loaded. This will cause the front of the car to want to be sort of pulled in a straight line instead of going around a bend, and creates understeer. Now if the front bar is softer, this will cause less weight to be transferred, and this creates understeer, less understeer, and a bit of turning as the car's not wanting to be pulled in a straight line. However, this can increase body roll as you're turning in a lot sharper. It can increase body roll and can make the car unstable in certain situations. Now with the rear, a stiffer rear also allows more weight to be transferred in the rear of the car, which causes the outside rear tyre to have more load, which pushes this car similar to the front, but it pushes it in a straight line through the turn. Now this will cause the front of the car to be pulled round and will cause oversteer through the turn. Now if this is softer, just like the front, will reduce this oversteer, but can cause body roll, which will make the car unstable. Now on the rear especially, if you make the rear softer, it can cause the car to be less tail happy. However, in a front wheel drive car, when you've got all the power being pushed through the front of the car, having a bit of a tail happy car can aid the car in getting around the bend. It can push the rear round the bend and help stop the car understeering, which is always a problem in front wheel drive cars. When you've got the front wheels which are doing all the turning and they're doing the accelerating, you lose grip in the front. You don't have all that grip you would get, say, in a rear wheel drive car when you can accelerate through a turn. So having a bit of a tail happy car can help bring the background, keep the car straight, and help you get that good exit out of the turn. Now in the last episode we went through the springs and the shocks, and just like the anti-roll bars, these all control how the weight is transferred across the car. Now if you're building a stiff car, so if all these are tuned to be stiff, there is more weight transfer, and if all of these are tuned to be soft, there is less weight transfer. Now stiffer cars are generally good for quick transitions, so chicanes and S's, while softer cars are not so responsive but allow for better tyre contact with the road, so a more stable ride, but you have to be more aggressive if you want to get around those quick turns. Now the tune that was initially put on here, which is when you put the upgrade on, we're actually going to leave it as this because there's no real initial tune you put on. It's all about adjusting it as you go around, whether the car's understeering, whether the car's oversteering. So as we drive around, we'll be adjusting this to make the car balance correctly. So let's head out to the track and get our first flying lap. So here we are back on the track around Suzuka West to have our first lap after we've put in the upgrades and left the anti-roll bars as they were, because there's no real set value for them. So we'll get this time to base the rest of the episode off to see if we can make some improvements in the time. So just heading around the 130R and coming up to the cut across the track by the Casino Triangle. So great view of the Ferris wheel in the back as always. So coming down to the Degners, which is always it's a good place to see if a car can handle it, because the first part of it, at least, you cut across the curb and you usually want to go through there full speed, and in this car you can go across there flat out, so there is no extra power upgrades in the car, but to be able to go across that flat out is always it's a good point if you've got good balance in your car. So coming up to the hairpin now, hard braking into it, getting a late apex on the turn so you get the good speed out of it for this long straight up towards the spoon curve. This big sweeper curve feels like it goes on forever when you're actually driving it, so just flat out all the way around, coming up to 5th gear, coming up to the entrance into the spoon curve, getting a nice tight line through the first part of it in 4th gear, dropping down to 3rd and getting a nice tight and clean exit so you can get that throttle up down early for a good drive down the straight. And just as we're coming up to a line, achieving a time of a 1:37.074. So here we are back on the track around Suzuka to do some testing and fine tuning of the anti-roll bars that we've now added to the car and try and improve on the time we had in the lap earlier. So while we're going around, we're going to be wanting to look out for 3 things. Now that's basically solely how we go around turns. We want the car to be balanced nicely, to have a nice balance between oversteer and understeer, to get good traction, good grip and good handling around the bend. So basically, for people who may not know, what is understeer and what is oversteer and how a balanced car should basically go around the turn. So we're going to have a look at this now. So the first one is understeer. Now understeer is when in the front of the car you have too much weight being transferred, so the outside tyre on the front is being overloaded. This is pushing the car in a straight line, and as you can see here, we go off the bend because the car can't turn in enough. So with oversteer we have this, but on the rear of the car, so there's too much weight being transferred on the rear, so the back left car tyre in this situation has been overloaded, pushing the back of the car round and spinning round. Now for a balanced car you want a good amount of weight transfer in the front and the back to cause the car to be able to turn in but not to spin out. So here we can see the car is facing a good angle, good straight, just on the curb, and it turns round. None of the back coming out, none of the front not pushing round the bend, and just getting a good balance basically of car. So as we go around the track, these are the things we want to be looking out for. If the front of the cars just want to go in a vertical straight line straight off the track, and if the back wanted to fling itself round and have its own party. So as we go around the rest of the track, you start to notice that as it's a front wheel drive car, and front wheel drive cars are notorious for this basically due to the fact that all the power from the car is being thrown through the front tyres, so as you're accelerating you're losing turning grip, so the car's wanting to go in a straight line. So we've got a lot of understeer in the car. Now it's not as bad as I've seen in many front wheel drive cars, because through all the other tutorials and all the other videos I've been trying to minimize this, because I know it's a huge problem in front wheel drive cars because I come across it all the time. So to try and counter this, we're going to soften the front anti-roll to lower the amount of weight transfer to stop it understeering so much. And we're also going to stiffen the rear anti-roll to get the rear to roll a bit more, to let the rear get a bit loose and try and bring the front of the car into the turn more, and not have the rear of the car still trying to push it in a straight line as well. So we're going to soften the front anti-roll down to 26, and we're going to stiffen the rear anti-roll to 25, and hope this just helps a bit on the turn entry and exit and stop it from understeering. Just get a good balanced turn in and a good balanced turn out, and just have the car feeling like it really should, and not just feeling like every time you put the power down you go in a straight line. So now we've got this tune, we're going to go back and have another lap and see if this has improved our time and our handling. So here we are back on the track to do our final lap of the episode, to see if we've made an improvement on the first lap we did. So we've got the anti-roll bars in now, which I always find, especially with the suspension as well, makes the car really as fast as you're going to get it from just fundamental handling, because all the rest of the stuff we've got, such as aero, braking, gears and differentials, I find just make the car easier to drive. They'll gain a bit of time, especially the aero if you're tuning it for a specific track, but the anti-roll bars do make quite a difference. But yeah, so we're coming down to the first Degner, going into the second Degner. The car does handle very nicely now, like especially through the Degners. It gets through there with quite ease. The first part is flat out. Through the second part, you just have to tap the brakes lightly, and it's quite easy to get a nice drive through there, especially the hairpin as well. I think the hairpin's always a tricky turn because you want to brake a bit late so you can hit a late apex, because you want that late apex so you can get the good speed around the 200R up to the spoon curve, because you don't want to get that tight line, or you're not going to get a good exit. You're going to go very wide and use up all the track, but not for the right reasons really. So coming into the spoon curve, nearing the end of the lap now, taking a nice tight exit and using all the track, pushing it as far as I physically can, taking the curb on the inside and then pushing it straight back onto the outside at the end of the spoon curve, and running down the hill and coming across the line with a time of 1 minute 36.746. So here we are at the end of episode 4, and we've gone through anti-roll bars in this episode, had a good look of anti-roll bars, had a brief overview for beginners on what understeer and oversteer is and how we want to balance the car, and just a general look on what the difference of stiff and soft cars can make through a track. So on the next episode we're going to go on to another important part on really making sure a car is balanced as you go around the track, and that's differentials. So they're going to be going to limited slip differentials and tuning these to try and help the car through the turns and try and get the best laps out we possibly can from the car. So I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, bye.